Welcome everyone back to weekly weather updates, and in today's video we're going to have the latest from the live radar, run for the latest weather warnings as we're seeing some pretty stormy conditions throughout the rest of Sunday into Monday, and we have seen an escalation in some of those warnings that we looked at in detail yesterday. We now have an amber warning issued for heavy rain across South Wales. Now it's not too unexpected with this strong southwesterly wind to be seeing heavy relief rainfall across South Wales, but there was quite a substantial increase in the precipitation totals expected overnight last night, and that's why we have seen this amber warning now put into force for much of the Brecon Beacons. We'll have a look at the latest UKV, have a look at the precipitation and the temperature over the next 5 days, looking at all of this rain coming in over the next sort of 48 hours or so. And then for much of next working week, we do have a pretty strong west to northwesterly wind, lots of cold polar maritime air masses getting drifted in from Greenland. We could see quite a few hefty showers as we do see a lot of instability within that air mass. So yeah, could be some thunderstorms around, some heavy torrential bouts of precipitation, hail, maybe even a few wintry showers further northwards as well. And of course, with that colder polar maritime air, we are going to see chillier temperatures as well. Potential for some frosts, especially further northwards, less so likely further southwards, and generally a much colder feel. Temperatures more around the mid to high single digits. And then we'll look at the longer range, which does continue to show a fairly westerly based pattern, but we do continue to see the signs of perhaps high pressure becoming a bit more of an influence around the day 10 period into early March. No real consensus on what that high pressure could do, but lots of the runs today showing some sort of build of pressure in and around the UK. GFS goes pretty cold. Other runs do keep it milder, but with higher pressure starting to get a bit more involved. So do remember, if you enjoy my videos, do like and subscribe. And remember to follow me on Twitter as well, the link's in the description. Now, if you start on the live radar, you can see this big wall of rain moving in from the west at the moment. This is this big storm system that is impacting us. Fortunately, the centre of the low is all the way just towards the south of Iceland, which means that we're not going to see the strongest winds associated with this system, but nonetheless, they are still going to be pretty severe, 60 to 70 miles per hour for many coastal areas. So pretty bad, but not as bad as some of the storms we've seen through the winter so far. The big thing, though, is the rain at the moment, with lots of these darker greens, yellows and oranges showing pretty torrential rain. And you can see really focused across the higher ground, lots of relief rainfall taking place across much of the Lake District, South Scotland, much of the central belt of Scotland, and towards the hills and mountains of Wales and southwest England. This will progressively push eastwards, become a bit more fragmented as it does, running into the high pressure across Europe, but still will give some moderate to heavy rain, even for the far east through the afternoon and evening. Now, recording this around lunchtime, you see the temperatures at the moment are pretty mild. The air mass is still fairly mild out there. The colder polar maritime air will only be sort of pushing in perhaps through Monday and Tuesday. So for the time being, it is still mild out there. That is one positive. But yeah, lots of heavy rain pushing in at the moment. Now, do go over to the weather warnings. We won't focus on the other warnings, as we did look at those in yesterday's video in quite a lot of detail, so do check that out. But we will zone in and zoom in on this warning for South Wales, mainly over the higher ground, but even extending to the coastal parts, Swansea, Cardiff and Newport there, from 3 p.m. this afternoon until 6 a.m. tomorrow. Again, we're looking at 50 to 70 quite widely, up to 80 to 100. And of course, with all that rain falling over the hills and mountains, it all floods down stream, and that's why even these coastal areas, so it won't see the heavy relief rainfall, could still be affected. Still seeing tens of millimetres themselves, and then of course the fallout from all the rain further up the mountains. So keep a close eye out for this if you're in this area. I'm sure you are well prepared for these heavy rainfall events. They do happen every year, many times a year in fact, but we've got another one coming up through this evening. As I said, could see up to 100 millimetres of rain in some spots. We've seen quite a lot of heavy rain over this week so far. Not torrential amounts, not ridiculous amounts, but enough that means this additional precipitation could cause some issues. You can see those warnings do go into Tuesday as well. Elsewhere, we do have widespread wind warnings. Again, no real change in this. If we see this, it's not been updated since yesterday. And we're still looking at that 50 to 60 quite widely, up towards 70 for some coastal and higher ground areas. Now, if you head over to the latest UKV now, you see that big wall of rain drifting in from the west at the moment. It will progressively push in further and further inland throughout the rest of this afternoon, fragmenting further eastwards, but still giving some intense rain, especially across that southern Wales area, where we've got a bit of a squall feature potentially clearing through. Again, not surprised that an amber warning has now been issued from the looks of this. Progressively through the evening, we continue to see more and more heavy rain progressing eastwards, but again, it does lose some of its intensity overnight, and into Monday morning, we still see some of that heavy rain lingering, but around lunchtime, it fully clears. Progressively through the rest of Monday, we start to see some more hefty showers pushing in, and we start to see a bit of a pattern similar to April showers with those northwesterly winds drifting in. But of course, we are about 5 weeks too early for April showers. So yeah, not going to see the same intensity, and that's because the sun isn't quite as strong. So not warming the ground up and not creating as big of a temperature contrast to those pretty cold upper air temperatures. Progressively through Tuesday into Wednesday, more hefty showers pushing in. Again, could be thundery and wintry in places, and could see some further heavy rain trying to push into the far south or southwest. But you can see it does fragment as it does move through. Now, if you look at the upper air temperatures, you can see it's pretty mild at the moment, and will continue to be mild over the next 12 to 24 hours or so. But into Monday, we start to see those colder air masses drifting in from the northwest, and it does get pretty chilly at times, down to -5, -6 degrees at 850 HPA through Tuesday and even into Wednesday, and could even get slightly colder than that for parts of Scotland, and that's where we could see some frosts developing. And then progressively later on the week, cold air still lingers, but those southwesterlies will likely break through into next weekend. So a pretty chilly week, polar maritime air dominating, and it will give a much bigger chill to the air. But as you saw from the precipitation charts, we're not expecting major wintriness, perhaps some wintriness though within some of those hefty showers. Now, do look at the temperatures this afternoon. It's another fairly mild day, but with the rain around, it feels a little bit colder, more around that sort of 9 to 14 degree mark. Pretty mild morning into Monday, 8 to 10 degrees, and by the afternoon rising slightly higher, 11 to 13, with a bit more sunshine around. Into Tuesday, a bit chillier in the north, especially where we do have the colder air drifting in, down close towards freezing or just above freezing, and by the afternoon, a much colder day. Temperatures struggling around the mid-single digits to high single digits. Again, relative to what we were seeing a week or two ago, and for much of January, that's not actually that cold. But for late Feb, heading into early March, it is below average, and you can see 8 to 10 degrees just about in the far southeast. Into Wednesday, a frost developing quite widely. Again, not a harsh frost, temperatures just about drifting towards zero. So some areas, especially in urban areas, could escape that. And into the afternoon, many again, low single digits in the north, mid single digits further southwards. And again, maybe 9 or 10 with a bit of cloud across the far south. And then into Thursday, a bit more of a widespread harsher frost. Many more areas down towards that 0, -1 or even -2 mark. And you can see into Thursday afternoon again, temperatures struggling 5 to 8 degrees, so a much colder day there. And again, another widespread frost potentially into Friday, but already the milder air starting to drift in from the southwest. So you can see it's not going to be an incredibly cold week, but it's going to be below average with that polar maritime air drifting in. And it's going to make it feel like we're back in winter. Even the last few days, it's definitely felt like we've had a bit of early spring. It was never going to be sort of sustained. We're always going to drift back to something slightly colder, and that's what we're going to see next week, with a pretty chilly end to February, but nothing too spectacular. Now, if you ever to the latest GFS, you can see that we have got a classic southwesterly at the moment, with the centre of the low focused towards Iceland, and that's why we're not seeing those severe winds, those winds staying more out in the North Atlantic. Eventually, though, through much this week, you see that west to northwesterly wind with the air coming in straight in from northeast Canada and southern Greenland, and it means it's cold, polar maritime air continues to push in. Brief high pressure later on in the week, that could exacerbate the frosts, but eventually, once that clears through, we'll likely see some milder air moving in. A bit more high pressure influence here for the start of March, but still lots of severe lows to our north. It's a very strong flat westerly pattern. It will all depend on what side of the jet stream we do end up on. As you can see for the south, it's pretty mild. Further northwards, though, some very cold air is close by, so we'll have to keep a close eye on that. However, this is what we start to see into early March, a bit of high pressure amplification, and look at this, high pressure ridging slightly further northwards up towards Iceland, a big mid-Atlantic ridge almost an omega block developing there. We've got a low to the west, high, and then low to the east. And what this does is it tracks in some pretty cold northerly winds, a low pressure system just to our east. And yeah, wouldn't be surprised to see a bit of winteriness with this. Again, it's not amazingly cold, temperatures around the low to mid single digits, so it's nothing, ridiculous. But it is 3 to 6 degrees. It's much colder than average, and there would be the risk of snow with those dew points down towards freezing. So yeah, it would be a really quite chilly pattern. You can see that from the 850 HPA potential equivalent temperatures, the temperature deviation a good 4 to 6 degrees below average. So yeah, very interesting GFS run today. No major block. You see the high pressure is not penetrating into the Arctic, up towards Greenland, or even dominating Iceland, which means it's unlikely to hold on for too long, but it could give a little wintry blast there into the middle of March. That's something to keep a close eye on. As I said in yesterday's video, it is quite usual. It's quite normal to see colder wintry blasts as we head through March and even into early April, and that's as a result of the weakening of the stratospheric polar vortex, and it means the blocking patterns do become a bit more prevalent. But of course, they do get negated by the fact that the cold air starts to run out, the sun gets a bit stronger, and it means that seeing severe cold is a lot more difficult. And again, you might have heard the statistics before, but it's actually more likely for many across the UK to see snow on Easter than it is on Christmas Day. And the reason for that is these blocking patterns which do develop, which means we're unlikely to see severe winteriness, but some sort of winteriness is actually more likely through March, even into early April, than it is sometimes in December. So you can just start to see the impacts potentially of that here. So we need to keep a close eye on that, but it is extended range at the moment. Now, if you compare to the GM, again, a very strong west to northwesterly over the coming days. Those polar maritime air masses moving through, and then a bit of a high pressure signal there as we head towards next weekend. So this is different to the GFS, which didn't have the high pressure ridging northwards, didn't have these lows pushing towards France and Spain. This would encourage a bit of an easterly flow, some colder air masses drifting in, and it would keep it pretty chilly, potentially an inversion taking place. The high pressure is never strong enough, and the tropospheric polar vortex isn't weak enough for it to actually push northwards, so we would remain with strong low pressure systems to our northwest, which means it's unlikely to ever turn into anything severely cold, but it could keep us pretty frosty and could keep us pretty cold there into early March. Even at this stage, at day 7, a bit of uncertainty, all down. So will we see this high pressure making some actual firm ground? GFS does it eventually, but the GM does it much, much faster. Now, to finish, for those longer range charts, have a look at the latest ECMWF. Again, that northwesterly continuing to push in over the coming days. That high pressure makes a bit of an influence next weekend, but see, it doesn't push all the way in, and we keep this very strong west to northwesterly flow. Some quite severe lows perhaps picking up within a little kink in the jet stream there, and all the way to 360 hours. No real sign of major high pressure over the top of us. A bit of a pressure build there, brief pressure build towards Scandinavia and Eastern Europe, but generally we remain pretty much alongside the jet stream with strong low pressure signal continuing to push in. So yeah, all 3 runs trying to push in a bit of high pressure. GFS and GM have a lot more success, but don't do it in the same way. ECMWF showing a little hints, but again, nothing too major. Now, after you finish by looking at the latest ensembles, if I do just quickly zoom in, you can see generally above average right now, dropping well below average into early next week, and pretty much staying below average for much of next working week, with on and off precipitation, some potentially hefty showers in places. As we head into early March, though, the upper air temperatures do look more likely to be around average or slightly above average. Nothing too crazy at this stage, and there are equally some cold runs appearing, and precipitation looks fairly moderate. Not high, not low, which again gives me that indication that there are runs showing higher pressure building in, firmly building in, and there are runs showing much lower pressure, firmly building in as well. So still a lot to play for there into early March. 2 meter temperatures dropping off quite a bit this week, down towards the mid to high single digits for most. Again, the overnight temperatures will be colder than this. Ensembles do struggle when we do see those frosts with those clearer skies, when it's not all down to those upper air temperatures, it's more due to the radiation overnight. because you generally see the upper air temperatures, the surface temperatures alongside the upper air temperatures do start to rise into early March, but no massive increase, perhaps more towards the double digits than the single digits like we're seeing this week. So that is at least a positive, a bit more of a milder trend there longer term, as expected as we progress into spring, but it's good seeing that. No huge delay in the onset of spring here from these latest runs. Bit of an early spring the last few days with a milder 14-15 degrees, but generally we're back on track to what we'd expect into next week and into the following weeks as well. If you look at the sea level pressure, you can see there is a lot of uncertainty in the longer range. Some high pressure runs, some lower pressure runs. Again, no definitive signal. Sometimes we can see a very strong signal into the longer range with one idea dominating. But here it is very much touch and go whether we will see lower pressure or high pressure dominating. As we saw from those operational runs, there is very little in it. If we look at the eastern ensembles, not as much below average over the next few days, and a little bit more of a milder trend later on in the week, but nonetheless still will be chilly, and then more of an average to above average trend there into early March, and very similar in those precipitation signal. And finally, the sea level pressure, a bit more of a low pressure trend there in the longer term. So similar to the operational run, not as much in terms of that high pressure signal. So that's something that's definitely cropping up more on the GFS and the GEM. So that's something to keep a close eye on. And yeah, we'll have to see which one wins out. Definitely would love to see the high pressure signal winning out. Of course, that would mean something drier, perhaps something warmer as well. We get to the time of year where high pressure building over the top of us would still give us chilly nights, but with lots of sunshine and moderate air mass, we would see temperatures in the day feeling pretty warm, maybe even into the mid-teens. So hopefully we see that high pressure signal. As I said in prior videos, I'm definitely at the stage now where I'm looking forward to some proper spring and summer-like conditions. I do love a good winteriness, some snow and bitterly cold conditions. I do enjoy that every year or so. But I've got to the point now where I'm looking forward to seeing those longer days, a lot more sunshine. It's been so cloudy the last couple of months, and seeing some proper warm, pleasant conditions once again. So anyway, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you again for another video soon.